Everyone, and welcome to Scouting the League. Rock Chalk Jayhawk, and not just because the number 4 ranked Jayhawk basketball team is looking to make a run. No, we are all about football here on Scouting the League. And to be honest, the only tournament that really matters this time of year is March Madness. Yes, that is NCAA wrestling, one of the great sports, perhaps the original of all sports. Gets started this Thursday and runs through Saturday night when the finals take place. I will be watching all that I can. Hopefully you appreciate wrestling as much as I do. Love the competition, love the mental toughness that it, displays. I can promise you on so many scouting reports, if that wrestling box is checked, man, that goes a long way into trusting that a guy can deal with the rigors of the NFL. It's something the NFL teams talk about. But again, enough of that. Back to today's guest, a former coach and now GM of the Kansas Jayhawks football team, Rob Ianello, joins Neil and I. But before we jump in, make sure you head over, like, subscribe, share this podcast wherever you're listening and watching, whether you are on YouTube with that video portion, you're listening on Apple Podcasts. That subscribe button is the big one. Let us know you're listening. Let us know in the comments that you like it, what you have questions on, what you want us to talk about in the future. I am Rodrik David. At Right Step ADV is where you can find me. You can head over to my website, rsafootball.com, for all my information, everything I do in the world of football. Make sure you check out the scouting community. If you are a scout or aspiring scout, make sure you check out our partners over at bluemaca.com. Use code scouting20 at checkout to let them know we sent you. Get a little discount on that order. Neil Stratton is at Inside the League on X. InsideTheLeague.com is his website. You know where to find him. Make sure you're signed up for that Friday wrap. And Rob Ianello is at Coach Rob Ianello on Twitter. So who is Rob Ianello? The GM at Kansas since 2021, in which time the Jayhawks have made some big moves in the Big 12, both on and off the field. A new stadium, as well as leading the way in NIL and all things college front office. A former coach that spent time at Alabama, Wisconsin, Arizona, Notre Dame, Akron, Kansas, and Buffalo. But let's hear it from the man himself.
Rob, we're so glad to have you, buddy. Welcome aboard.
Neil and Rodrik, I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate it very much.
All right, well, Rob, we're going to start you off the way we start every one of our podcasts. We want you to know kind of how you got here. How'd you decide to make football your career? How'd you decide to kind of advance into coaching? And then ultimately, it's atop of a front office at the P4 level, man.
Well, I played from when I was a young guy, right? Pop Warner, 8 years old, all the way up through high school. And I give my kind of the coaches along the way, credit for influencing me. My high school coach back in Archbishop Stepinac High School in White Plains, New York, was a really great influence on me, Bill Kane. And I kind of always knew, I think from a young age, I wanted to coach football. I wanted to get involved in football. I wanted to do that. So I went to Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. and was a student manager. And because I wasn't a very good player, but I think they usually say the worst players make the best coaches. So I tried to follow that lead. And so at Catholic U, I was a student manager, and then in a small Division III school. By the time I got into my junior year, I mean, this is not a full-time coaching staff, so I was able to kind of be like the running back coach, and then I'd go home in my Christmas vacation, and you'd still be home when the high schools go back in session. I used to go around Westchester County representing Catholic U and going into high schools when I was a college student, and sitting down talking to kids about Catholic U and trying to get them to come visit. And so that morphed into getting to the University of Alabama. At the time, they went from unlimited GAs to 5, but there was so Alabama tried to beat be creative like they kind of always have been, and had off the field, recruiting GAs. So I great gentleman named Jack Flake, who's since passed. I always told him, I says, you just let me talk you into hiring me. Right? I had had somebody different call him for a week. I just think he didn't want to hear from folks back east much any longer. So he hired me as a recruiting GA. And so I got my feet wet in the recruiting part of it. Right. And at a Southeast Conference school, Bill Curry was the head coach, who's a great man. And I used to walk up and down the hallways at night, listen to the coaches talk on the phones to recruits. And I still remember our defensive line coach, Larry New, and how many times he could work the word University of Alabama into a conversation with a kid. Every every 10 words was the University of Alabama, right? I mean, it was an education. It was a PhD in college football and recruiting. And I got the great fortune to go to the University of Wisconsin when Barry Alvarez took that job, and as the on-campus recruiting coordinator. So someone would travel, I would stay in, and I'd be the organizational guy, and then I'd be on the phone all the time, and that's really I felt like I learned to evaluate, right, what guys on the staff are looking for at positions. And yes, I was the kind of the guy that would cull the tape. I'd watch 50 tapes to get down to the 10 guys should watch. And so I really learned how to evaluate and at that time what you look for. And it was a great thing. We went from the worst team in the league, 1-10, to winning the Rose Bowl. And then I got a chance to get to the University of Arizona with Dick Tomey, and at that time become one of the 9 coaches, but specialized in recruiting and going on the road and evaluation, and gave me the chance to set up the whole thing A to Z. And unbelievable coaches on that staff. We had unbelievable players. I was 9 years at Arizona, 7 with Dick as the head coach. Met my wife, Denise, who was an assistant women's basketball coach at Arizona. Our son was born there. And then my career kind of took off from there from a coaching standpoint, and Dick was a guy that when I went there, I said, hey, I just want to know that if I do a good job with what you give me, that I could get an opportunity to potentially coach if I show I can do it. And he said, absolutely. And he was true to his word. I worked hard, and he recognized that. And I had good results, and I was able to then become the receiver coach there. And then took my receiver coaching career and recruiting coordinator to other stops, as I went through this. And, so I've always been someone that's kind of had an investment in our roster, had to have investment in our evaluations, had to recruit an area, had to develop relationships with high school coaches or families and people across campus, right? And staffs weren't like they are now, right? So when you were the recruiting coordinator and a receiver coach, and you were organizing visits with a recruiting secretary, and that's what you had, man. You had to do it, and you had to get it all done. And I can remember, I'd be in a hotel room, and I'd come back from my recruiting visits from a home visit at 9:30 at night, and I have a fax at the hotel of our recruiting weekend. And I'd go in my hotel room, and I'd mark it up. And first thing in the morning, I would call back to the office and go through it. And then we'd do the same thing the next night, right? So I kind of felt like that's where I learned to handle a lot of things at once. And if somebody was ever to ask me, what do you think is one of your main strengths? I always felt like my ability to handle a lot of things at once was that. And that's where I kind of learned it. When you were a position coach, you recruited an area, you were in charge of recruiting, you did things, and it wasn't a specialization. And back then you evaluate every position, right? I mean, I signed players that were O linemen, D linemen, linebackers. You didn't just get on a plane and go see the guys at your position. You only went and saw those guys later on. You trusted somebody in the area to do that for you until you kind of honed in on them, right? So, and I think that's a skill that, sometimes young guys coming up in our business right now in coaching end of it only kind of worry about their position. And you guys obviously work a lot of stuff with the NFL. If you're an area scout and you can only evaluate one position, you don't have a lot of value to that organization, So I took a lot of pride in learning how to do that, and you got to make some mistakes along the way, but you also have a lot of successes.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so now you're GM. But you had extensive coaching experience, what have you. It's kind of where the money is. Traditionally, you're coaching on the field, and you're on the path to being a head coach one of these days. When you crossed over to a more executive role, despite the fact that you had a lot of experience on that side, were you reluctant to do it? Did you ever see your role becoming as critical as it has become? I mean, the GM has become a pivotal part of every team, especially on the P4 level.
Yeah. So in the beginning, honestly, I was reluctant to do it. Right. I always felt like there would be a time when I would potentially do something like that, but I still felt like I had a lot of juice in my coaching game, But then as we looked at the coming to Kansas after they had been 0-9 and not had a lot of success for over a decade, there was a lot of work to do, and there had to be a lot of hands on deck. So as we looked at the GM role, we kind of took that title, came up with that title from a standpoint of, you know, football involvement, right? And have an impact on the football part of the program, the recruiting, the roster, the evaluation, but other things in the program that, you know, that I was handling at the time, you know, I'd say a lot of the player things in our program, if it's going to be involving a player, touching a player, you know, those would be some of the things that my tentacles would touch, right? I would say our chief of staff handles kind of a lot of the head coach fires, a lot of the things involved with his daily day, and I would handle a lot of the fires with the program daily day if I had it divided up. And and then as this evolved, when the NIL passed, but then the revenue share was on the horizon and going to pass with the House settlement, then it's really shifted, right? So some of the other things that I maybe oversaw, we had to move a few of those because now this was going to take up not just, you know, 55% of my time. It was going to take up 90% of my time. And between all the hats that you wear in this role, and different schools will do it different ways and set it up in a different way than we have it set up here. I still have a lot of my tentacles in the player issues, right? And I'm the principal. If there needs to be a principal in the building before it gets down the hallway to the head coach, but you know, I want to stay on top of the things that can affect our players in a positive way, whether that be our academic setup or how we structure our revenue share, you know.
Now, obviously, again, going back to your experience as a coach, Rob, we're seeing a lot more what I would call professionalization of the front office role now. We're a lot more kids, they're young, coming in. They've never been a coach. All right. They've always been in an evaluation role. They may have been grinding tape for 2 or 3 years and they advanced to something, maybe an assistant DTP, and they kept on climbing that way. Coaching's different from player evaluation. Do you think that's a blind spot for a lot of these people who haven't had that experience of actually being out on the field with the players and on the sidelines and what have you?
Well, I do think that experience has helped me a lot, right? And I do think my lens, looking through it through a coach's lens, understanding his position room a little bit, you know, or the needs and of the whole organization, right? And having coached, I do think has helped me a lot, and I think it's a great lens for me to look through, right? And I think it makes me more well-rounded in doing this, and I think gives me an advantage, candidly, over some others that haven't coached and are kind of maybe just, you know, kind of have the blinders on for the evaluation mode, but the other things that go into it, right? I sit in, you know, all of our special teams meetings. I was sitting offensive unit meetings, defensive unit meetings. I will look at the install that's going in on both sides of the ball. And obviously the offensive scheme is very similar to what we ran at Buffalo to here. So the language is closer, but on defense, I kind of like to know, you know, what a guy's expected to do. Now, maybe not all the particulars, but if he's supposed to blitz, is he blitzing, right? If he's supposed to, you know, so then I think when I watch the tape, then it helps me through a lens to know, okay, this guy's not learning well. This guy's, you know, he can't do it. He won't do it. You know, different things that I do when I evaluate our roster, which I spend a lot of time on evaluating our roster. And because I do feel like in talking to folks in the NFL and think people make the most mistakes evaluating their own team. Right. And I do, as I study the NFL, excuse me, I do greatly understand now why there's a separation between personnel and coaching. Right. Because when I coached a group, I was locked in with those guys. Right. And so I was slanted towards the guys, and you should be slanted towards the guy. If you're invested in your team, invested in your position, you should not be objective when it comes to the guys in your room. So somebody has to be objective. So I understand why the NFL does it the way they do, more and more every day. So I try to be objective, right? As I go through and I watch a guy and on our team, and I watch guys, you know, outside of our team, but you have to start with your team first. You have to know what you have. You have to know who's ascending. You have to kind of do a great job with that. Then that allows you to look at other things. But I do think the coaching part, long answer to a question, I do think it has benefited me greatly. And I think giving me a unique lens in this profession right now.
Now, Rob, you've been obviously okay as a coach. You've been that guy that was loyal to your players, that believed they could turn the corner, believed they could develop, all those kind of things. As a GM, you've got to be a bit more detached and a little
Yeah.
bit more coldly logical about things. How do you bridge that gap, Rob? How do you go to the coach and say, "Listen, man, I know you believe in this kid and you put a lot of time into him. We've got to go in a different direction." Is that? I guess that I presume that takes a lot of diplomacy skills. Am I right?
Yeah, no, it does. Sometimes I feel like I'm an alderman in Chicago a little bit more so than, um, but you do, and you just gotta you develop a trust with that coach, right? He's got to trust you and trust that when you're talking to him, it's coming from some place, and if you have a disagreement on a guy, then you talk it through and you look at it, right? And there might be something that I haven't seen that he has seen more consistently than me, right? Or I've seen some things as I watch, you know, tape of other players, right? Because our opponents and stuff like that, that I see things. Hey, just in our league now, this is what I've seen, and so I could give an objective approach to it, but I do believe there's got to be a collaboration in this, right? There's got to be some things, but I do know the one thing I miss about coaching is that I'm not as invested in my room in those guys. I don't have that group that's my guys, right? My relationship with the players is different now, and I miss that part of it. But it's that distance that I have now that makes me more objective, and I think helps me be good at what I'm doing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Rob, you kind of mentioned the fact that hey, there's a reason why NFL teams have their front offices set up, and again, they've
Hmm.
been big front offices, big scouting departments, again, really attacking it in that way
Hmm.
for a while now. Again, they got a pretty good formula, pretty good blueprint. From all that I've heard about Kansas, is you guys have been on the front end of hey, kind of continuing to think about new ways, unique ways of doing things as we get into again what the future of college football is going to look like, especially at the P4 level. Do you think specifically your front offices across the Big 12 and everything at the P4 level is going to continue to look more and more like an NFL model?
I do, and I do spend a lot of time talking to when I talk to somebody that's just taken over, like um, John Garrett took over at Florida State, Dave Poloquin took over at Michigan, Dave worked for me at Notre Dame. That's what I ask them when they first take over a place. How you setting it up? You getting to do it right from scratch now in this era. How are you setting things up? And that's what I'm interested in more so than what their grading scale is. So we have evolved in the last 2 years to having a high school division and a college division of our front office. And I think in today's day and world, you have to do that. And then I do think there's got to be crossover, right? I mean, there's a time in the year when the college division can assist the high school division in evaluations. And then once we get to November 1st, that high school division has got to be ready to flip to assist the college division. But we do have that separation as we're set up. I think that was important to do. I think it really benefited us this past year. Um, Knowing that we were going to, be very active in the transfer portal, and I think, and then we also I thought did a very good job in our high school part of it. So I'm excited for how we can just continue to tweak it and get better at it and improve it.
Rob, give us a little bit of insight into how, I guess, the pipeline from first eyeball on a player, especially as we're talking about the portal.
Mhm.
How many are watching a player? How are you cross-checking that until it gets to you and you're like, okay, this is a guy we want to make an OV, we want to make an offer, all those kind of things. How does that work for y'all?
Yeah, we have several folks in our college, but our director of player personnel, Grant Murray, heads up the college division, right? So, so he and we have two other guys with him that will take agent lists. Really, we work off a lot of what agents not saying, "Hey, this kid's going in the portal for sure," but here's who I represent, right? And we will watch. He will watch those, and we'll split them up either at times by position and at times just by agent, right? And we work off a big sheet, big kind of Google type document that we work off of, and then they will grade them. We have a high school scale, which would be in the NFL the equivalent to the college scale, right? We have we have a college scale, which would be the pro scale for the NFL. Then we have an internal scale, but they're all very similar with the colors, red, blue, purple, you know, green and such down the line, like kind of like the NFL, and there's a corresponding number to it. So once they watch guys and they're pre-screening guys, when he gets a certain grade, that's the guy I watch, right? Certain grade or higher, then I will watch that guy. And then we will put them over here. And then eventually when the appropriate time comes, we have our position coaches involved in watching that group of guys. And so that's kind of how that pipeline flows. And on the high school division, we have a pipeline that flows from either the recruiting officer, the area coach, to the staff, to the director of the high school division, to me, and then to the head coach as we go, right? But the college thing flows from a lot of names. I mean, down to what certain grades are, and then we know what positions we're looking at, and then whenever we feel like it's appropriate time, then to engage an agent to say, hey, we watched Johnny College here, and he's a guy that we'd be interested in if he left his school, or tell me about him, give me some background on him, so so that's kind of how we try to approach it, and we're always looking at, is that the right way? And for a while I was really concerned about, boy, I'm going to have a bunch of guys watch a lot of guys, and 10% is going to go in the portal.
Right.
Am I wasting time? Then I started thinking about all the high school guys we watch that either are interested in us or we don't think are good enough or going to go somewhere else. And, that's a pretty high percentage too, right? So I think in my mind, I balanced it that way, saying, it's the same. And if we watch 10% and we're able to get good players out of that 10% that actually do enter the portal, then we've had success doing that. We can't worry about the guys that, we watch that. Great for them. They don't go in the portal, stay at their school, or they go someplace else. That's, good for them.
Rob, have you found that because of the portal, again, kind of with that same idea, hey, we've got to recruit just as many, if not more, kids at the high school level, because we need to get to know them, because even if they're not in play for us this year as a high school guy, a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, this kid could be a portal guy. Again, that's a great time, great opportunity to get that background, knowing that, hey, eventually it could come back around for you guys.
Yeah, we don't delete a guy off our high school board, right? So if a guy is either maybe not as interested in us or then commits somewhere else, we still keep him on the board, and we still gets all of the correspondence all the way through until a certain time, right? So we stay engaged with them all the way through. It's not, there were times back in the day when I'd recruit a kid really, really hard and I wouldn't get him, and the phone conversation might not end as gracious at the end, because I was a sore loser. But now the phone conversations end, say, wish you all the best of luck, and, we'll be following your career.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly
That's
right.
smart.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned the fact, obviously it is a collaborative process between your evaluators and the coaches, but it's an environment where not every time are you going to have agreements. Let's say you've got a kid that y'all really like, and you bring him to your wide receivers coach, your defensive line coach, or whatever. He's like, this isn't a guy for us. How do you break that tie? Do you go to Coach Lance and say, listen, this is kind of where we are, or do you have veto power? I mean, how does that work?
I would probably, in that instance, when we have those few instances, I let the head coach decide the tie. Yeah. I mean, I feel like he wants to do that. And I think he feels like that's, part of his responsibility to do that. If we have a hard decision like that to make, so we'll do that. In the high school end of it, I really do err more on the side of, okay, if you've seen them practice or you've seen them play, and I haven't, because you're out there, then I err more obviously towards the person who saw him live. Right. So that trumps everything if you've seen them live. In the portal, you try to get as much information as you can, research the young man, but then if we have a disagreement, like you mentioned, then Coach Leipold, Lance will decide. Yeah.
Okay. Now, it seems like a blind spot. Maybe it's just something I I'm not identifying, I'm not seeing. Injury evaluation is so much a part of the NFL game and trying to figure out, hey, do his knees work properly? Do his shoulders work properly? Are you able to evaluate that, Rob, in the intense rush of the portal? Are you able to get a good handle
Yeah.
on where a kid, where the areas may be as far as his health?
That's a really hard thing in the speed that we're dealing with. But we ask more injury questions than we ever have before. We'll ask the young man, when we're allowed to talk to him, right? We ask him questions when we're allowed in a period that we can talk to the agent. We ask him those questions. And if a guy's coming off of some type of injury, part of their stop all the time is with our medical people, right? And the evaluation could be in depth. We have reserved times. He has, we for MRI. So if we need to MRI a kid when he's coming in, we have some slots to do that. And if a young man would maybe not want to do that, then we're probably not interested in him. And it might not be a disqualifying thing, the MRI, just maybe knowing what we're dealing with when the young man comes to our place, how we could best treat him. And so we've made the medical part, sitting down with our trainer, getting a full medical history, and if needed, doing that because it's now a financial investment above and beyond a scholarship investment. And you have to be able to be as thorough as you can in as quick a period as you can, because it's like speed dating at times now. It is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Now, I'm I'm completely out of my league when it comes to medical. Can you turn an MRI in a few hours and have it analyzed and be able to make a decision before the guy leaves the building, or is it something where it's more a 72-hour kind of thing? I mean, how does that work?
It could be a situation where we will tell the guy, hey, pending the outcome of this, right? Or we could enter in a contract where we have some language that states pending the outcome of the MRI, so.
Yeah.
That sounds like something the NFL has dealt with recently, but
Yeah.
between Baltimore and Vegas,
Yeah.
get everybody fired up about that again.
Yeah. I'm going to stay away from that hot stove topic here.
Rodrik's out here poking the bear.
Mhm.
Okay, so you sit at the top of the pyramid with respect to running the team kind of off the field.
Yeah.
Who's the second most important member of the front office, Rob? And is that true at Kansas, but it may be true at a different place? I mean, is it someone in recruiting? Is it another evaluator? I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, I'd say the two heads of our divisions are the two most, right? Okay. Just really, if you look at it, it's kind of unique, I think, college, right? So Grant Murray's our DPP, right? He heads up the high school division. He's been with us the longest, right? He came from Buffalo here. Really good evaluate, someone I trust. Billy Bonneau, okay, who was with us at Buffalo and then had a couple of years of internship with the Giants, to the scouting assistant with the Jets, right? I really like his background that way. So he heads up the high school division, right? So those two guys are really important to keep those things flowing, to work with our coaches, to just, grind away at tape. And then we have an on-campus division, right? For when young men come on campus. And we'll see our campus and handle a lot of the communication. But from an evaluation perspective, Billy and Grant are really important factors here, for us, in keeping things going. And when I get, taken away with maybe some other things involved with the program, or when I'm maybe tied up with the agent conversations, I know that both those divisions are going, right where the way they need to be going because of Grant and Billy, oversee them.
Okay. All right. So that's a perfect kind of dovetailing into what my next question is. As a GM, you've got to be communicating with a lot of people inside the building and outside the building. You've already you talked about agents and what have you. Is it harder to communicate with people effectively inside the building with your staff and coaches and kind of keeping them all aligned? Or is it hard to really build that network outside, the agents, the recruits, those kind of people that you don't see in a regular, that you still have to keep those lines open with? What's the biggest challenge there?
Yeah, I think there's challenges involved with both. I do. I mean, Dick Tomey, who I worked for 7 years, and one of my greatest mentors, you say football is not complicated. People are complicated, right? So I think the challenge internally in communication, right? I mean, in the building itself, even though you're seeing people every day, is keeping keeping everybody connected, right? So you have to have really good communication on what we're doing, where you're headed, who's doing what. I mean, I think those are things. And then with the coaches, right, with our coaching staff, the communication is, with our evaluation system and how we want it to work, and and what is a red player, and what is a blue player, what is a purple player, right? I mean, that's some things, so we all see it the same. When we give somebody a certain rating, we all know what it means, right? We all have that idea, especially now in today's world, because a rating on any player has a dollar signs associated to it. Okay. And so I tell them that if you give him that grade, that's great. If we all feel that's what he is, then that's okay. All right.
Mhm.
But but let's make sure we all are convicted in that, that he is that grade. Right. So I think that's the challenge, within your building. Okay. The external challenge is just what you said, right? Agent relations is a huge part of this, right? And getting to know the agents, getting to build up trust with them, and for me to get to know which guys I can trust. All right. That is a huge part of this. And so me connecting with them via phone, down and at the combine, I was not unlike an NFL front office where I met with a bunch of agents. I set up meetings ahead of time and did that. And I thought that was invaluable for me to do. And I got to find other, uh, you know, you know, uh, avenues to do that, other places, other things where there's a lot of them together, but just having a good relationship with them, getting to know them, communicating with them, that's a huge part. That's the hugest part to me externally. That is the agents that I will deal with are the high school coaches I used to deal with when I was on the road recruiter and I was walking in the halls of high schools, right? And I was developing that relationship with that high school coach in Philadelphia or Chicago or Texas, and I could call him up and we can talk, and I go in his school and we sit down, and he would say, give me the background on Johnny, and I believed and trusted it, but he also trusted me enough to send Johnny to play for me and play for the school I was at. That's where the
Sure.
agents are for me right now. They're that person. They're critical to this, and I really feel like as this has moved the last 2 years, I've been dealing with more NFLPA certified agents that have been in this a long time, whereas prior I was dealing with maybe some folks that weren't. Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm. And has that been a net positive? I presume that's what you mean?
that's a positive. Yeah, I feel that's a really big positive, and in this, and they're not pushing kids into the portal. They're not trying to, turn you upside down, get all the money out of your pockets. Not all the time, anyway. Some might still be trying to do that, but I do feel like, they've been through this before. They've been through the contracts before. Now I have had a couple that feel like, hey, I'm the NFL guy. You're not. I'm gonna try to get you
Really?
here. Okay. I've
Really?
certainly felt that a few times, and then the kind of Northeast Italian comes out of me, and I might, and then we kind of got it. We reach an impasse, maybe, so.
Now, Rob, you're not the only evaluator in your household.
No, I'm
Um,
not.
your wife
I'm
was
not
a
even the best evaluator in my household. I would admit to that. Yes.
former college basketball player, coach, as well as a former WNBA scout. Now, does
Uh-huh.
she ever weigh in? Do you ever bounce ideas off of her? Or do you take advantage of the fact that she can kind of speak your language a little bit?
Oh, well, she has weighed in during the time of my career and our marriage a few times. Yes. And she still to this day takes credit for Golden Tate, because she watched the tape with me at Notre Dame and said, "You need to go recruit this guy." And says, how much more of this tape we got to watch? Okay. So she takes full credit for Golden, and us offering him a scholarship at Notre Dame. And then when Michael Floyd was playing for us and he was a freshman, and every day I'd come home from training camp, she says, "Is he starting?" Not yet. He's got to earn a little bit. Earn what? What? Are you kidding me? He's not starting. So no, she does weigh in. I tell this story. So when she was coaching, um, because we were Arizona at the time, and their July recruiting period was timed up with our vacation. So I would always take one of her trips. She was going someplace, and I'd go with her on the trip. And during the day, I'd go do what I do. But then I always would take one day and go to the gym with her. So we're in Las Vegas, and we're in this gym, and we're watching a young lady, and we just finished watching her play. And I walk in, here comes, at the time, Jody Conrad, the head coach at Texas. Here comes the number one assistant at Tennessee. Here comes Tara Vonderveer, and then in walks Gina Oriema into this gym. And she says, "You ready to go?" I says, "No, I'm not leaving. I want to see who these guys are, who they're watching." Okay. And so this game started, and this young lady went up and down the court twice. I said, 33. They're all watching 33. She said, "Oh," she said, "that's really good. She's only like one of the best players in the entire country." I said, "See, this basketball evaluation thing is easy." Okay. Twice she went up down the court. I could tell you she was really, really good.
That's a quick scout right there.
Yeah, that was a quick scout. Yeah. I think she ended up going to Texas.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So you joined us at our symposium in February.
mhm.
What was one topic of discussion that you really felt, man, this is something that it's like they're speaking my language? And
Mhm.
then was there one area that people talked about that you don't have to face that problem at Kansas?
First of all, I really appreciate you putting that on. I know I didn't get to the one the year before, but I really do appreciate you doing that. And I think it's great. And I thought we're gonna have to knock down a couple walls there in that room, right, to fit everybody in it. So,
You
I
knocked
think
it
it's
out.
great, and I appreciate the guys on in the panel and doing a great job. I thought the discussion around the commercial NIL and the CSC, right, was really beneficial discussion and something we're all dealing with, right? I think we just saw something in the coming out, right, in the news outlets here about
Absolutely.
how many deals have been passed, but a lot of deals that haven't been passed yet, right? So, so I really thought that really hit home, and that was really, I think, a really good discussion. And and we're all kind of dealing with the same problems and looking for the same answers. And I think what also came out of that discussion was we all don't have any answers for that right now, right? Um, and so that's really the main one. I felt like, the the agent relations discussion, and our young man there that didn't like the didn't like waking up at 5:42 a.m. I met with him that afternoon, him and his group, and I said
Mhm.
I was gonna see if you guys wanted to change the meeting to 5:30 tomorrow morning as opposed to meeting this afternoon, but then I heard you on the podium. I like to feel like I've done I haven't had that issue with agents, right? Um, and I don't need a guy calling me at 11:30 at night, either, right? So I think I try to give them space and things of that nature. But the one thing I did take from there too is we're all dealing with the same time demands during the peak period, and I've really been looking at that internally for us of how I can um, share the load a little bit on the agent discussions, at least in the preliminary stages of this,
Mhm.
before it all comes back to me for the final stuff. So I'm and I got that probably was reinforced to me in that symposium at that panel and something, and when one discussion is centered around that.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So I believe last Friday, President Trump had a panel. I think he had 50 people from around not just football, but from
Mhm.
around college athletics at every level. Some big names and maybe some names a lot of people didn't recognize.
Mhm.
If you had been there, Rob, what
Mhm.
would you have wanted to say? What would have been your area of focus given that opportunity to, to kind of be in front of
Mhm.
so many important people
Yeah.
who need to hear certain things?
Yeah, it was a great group. Our chancellor was there, Dr. Gerard,
Oh, wow.
so but I think obviously I think everybody's trying to look for Congress to kind of rescue us here a little bit. And what I would say is we have to kind of rescue ourselves a little bit, and particularly the conferences, right? The four Power Four conferences need to get in a room, and we need to set some parameters ourselves, and we need to come out of here with saying, okay, this is how we're going to govern. right? Because it's going to have to begin and end there.
Mhm.
And so that would be, to me, how this is all going to get done. If people want a collective bargain, which could eventually be the right way to go, but I always say, who's collective and bargaining with who?
Mhm.
Who's representing the schools? Who's representing the athletes? I mean, how do you how do you propose to do that, right? And
Mhm.
the only way to do that if all four Power Four conferences are on the same page, and they all have to do it together, and we can't be suing each other if we are the NCAA, we are the universities, yet we turn around anytime we don't like right now, we don't like the ruling, and we want to sue each other. But we created the NCAA, we are the NCAA, and sometimes things don't go your way, okay? But so that's but I believe it has to begin and end with the Power Four conferences.
Mhm. Okay. Again, excellent timing here. We're looking at P4 and G5 schools, obviously a very different level of play, little different level of financial commitment, et cetera, et cetera. But I think we're also seeing a growing chasm between, let's say, the SEC and the Big Ten
Mhm.
and the ACC and the Big 12. And then maybe even within conferences, we're seeing schools that are more haves and schools that are more have nots. Are you seeing this? And is that something that is making it tougher to win given those stressors in the game?
Yeah, I do think there is a separation, and it's interesting because this whole thing started from the house that case, the House versus the NCAA that was settled. But then there's two components to this, right? There's the revenue share component, which this past year was at 20 point, 8 million at 20 point, yeah, 20 point, you know, $8 million that you divided up as an athletic department. Then from that administration had to decide how much goes to football and men's basketball, women's basketball. So everybody's revenue share cap is different, right?
Mhm.
So depending on where you are, you could have decided that, hey, 15 million of this is going to go to football and X to basketball and X here, or hey, 13 million is going to football because I have hockey, I have this, so um, but I'd say in the Big 12, most of us are at close to the same revenue share number, except for one school. I think Texas Tech is cut above us. And at the symposium, I think the general manager kind of let us know that. Okay. So, but I think so. But the separator now has become the commercial NIL above the cap, right? That is the huge separator here. And the
Right.
teams that have found ways to do that, found the brands to work with, found the formula for getting these approved through NIL Go. Those are the schools that are um, really separating themselves.
Mhm.
Where the Big Ten and SEC have the advantage is, because they have more revenue coming in from television as such, their operating budgets of their departments haven't had to make some hard decisions like some other schools have had to make with sports or with different things, right? I mean, with staffing throughout the department because they've still not, when you say, oh, you got to go, rev share $20 million, well, you got to find that $20 million.
Yeah.
And those schools and those conferences had more of a revenue source coming in because of their television contracts to be able to not have to maybe make some decisions other schools made, right? Unfortunately, at Kansas, we had a great plan, and the university is greatly supporting us. And our AD, had been looking at this for a while, right? So we've been being resourced really well, but not everybody is set up that way, and that has become the separator in
Mhm.
this. But I think in our league, Texas Tech has separated themselves, and I don't know the effects of Utah, doing that deal with the private equity group, right? What effects that will have on them in a positive way. Obviously, they feel like it probably will. I just don't know what that is to whether that will separate them in some shape or form.
That private equity thing is such a Pandora's box. I don't
Mhm.
know what it's going to mean, negative or positive. I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop on a lot of that because it's got to
Yeah.
be tempting to a lot of other schools that may be in similar situations. Now,
Yeah, we're all kind of looking at that, I think, to trying to
yeah.
see what that is and how much sense that makes. Yeah.
Now, Rob, football is not the only sport at Kansas. Do y'all butt heads with the basketball program at all? I mean, have y'all got a pretty good equitable understanding of how that stuff works when it comes to the money?
Yeah, I mean, our basketball team's not in our schedule, and we're not on theirs, right? So we're not competing with each other that way. And we want them to win in the worst way. It's Kansas basketball is a blue blood of blue bloods, and Coach Self is a coach of all coaches, and he is very supportive of us. If you ask him to talk to a recruit, you ask him to come do something, he's awesome in doing that. So we do have a great rapport with them, a great working relationship with them, and we want Kansas basketball to get everything they need to be successful. And I've been in the meetings where Coach Self has said football needs to do everything they can to be successful. Right? He's fought for us, and so I mean, I do feel like we have identified what we need to be successful. Right behind me here, right, you see that stadium. So when
Yeah.
this whole thing is done, we were 70% last year, and we just knocked down the one side to finish it coming up. This is going to be $800 million project when it's all finished. And you don't do that unless football is important at your school. Certainly not in today's day and time, right, where you'd have to share money. And so there's a huge commitment from our chancellor on down to football being successful at Kansas, and certainly we want in basketball to be successful at Kansas. And we've done great in other sports, right? Our baseball team was in the playoffs last year, right? And 2 years ago, our women's basketball team, advanced, and we've had some really good. Our golf team has been terrific, right? So we have some sports doing really, really well. Yeah.
Mhm. You got a lot going on there, Rob, obviously. Sounds like you got pretty much everything tied down the way you need to, but at the same time, there's only 24 hours in a day. What area of your job gets less attention than you'd like to give it?
There's certain points of the year where, the evaluation side of it, right? I don't get to do. I find that to be the fun part, right? And I sometimes don't get to do that as much as I'd like to do, like really dive in to some guys. And so I wish I had more time in my day to do that, right? Because as you get going through things, right, I got to stay on top of the organizational piece of the whole operation. I need to make sure I'm dialed into my financials, right, and okay, and where that's headed. Where am I at now? Where am I got to go to? I mean, we're as I think I should be. My focus right now is in the role I have is when the 26 season ends, right? I'm looking at the 2017, and I'm looking at the salary cap, the management of that, when that hits, okay, that's a main focus of mine right now, trying to look at that as it affects the 27 high school recruiting class. So I do wish the evaluation side was something that if I had a few more hours, it's a 26-hour day. That's where I put the 2 hours. Yeah.
Rob, do you find yourself, especially when it comes time to make offers in the portal and all those kind of things, do you find yourself having to go strictly off the word of your people, or do you get, hey, listen, I got to at least see an hour of film on this kid before I give him the Rob Ianello stamp of approval? I mean, how much are there guys you really don't
No,
get to see at
no,
all?
no, I will not engage an agent in a negotiation with someone I have not watched. I have no comfort level in doing that at all. And I don't see, and I know different front offices I've talked to different people are set up different ways where some guy does the negotiation. He doesn't do any evaluation. And, and some guy does the evaluations doing the negotiation. I don't know. I don't I'm convicted different when it comes to that, right? The guy who's, if I'm the guy A in charge of that, and B, if I'm the guy talking the numbers and working out a contract, I have to have an opinion of that young man, right? And I have to have evaluated him and feel good about what we're about to do, okay? And have at times talked it through with guys, saying, "Hey, okay, now you see him this way, I see him this way. We kind of both see him the same. So this is our this is our threshold on this type of player. And so I'm strongly convicted I'm not having a conversation about someone I have not put a grade on.
Does that mean you're up up at midnight watching game tapes trying to get that opinion in before?
I do. Sometimes it's come home and it's okay. I got to watch these 4 guys here. I know right away, right, that I haven't watched yet, but and so yes, I am at times coming home and sitting in this home office here. I'm going to watch these guys, and I know in the Christmas period of time, right, we unfortunately didn't go to bowl this year, so when we broke, I kind of set up shop in his home office, and I had some hours of the day where I knew I'm not talking to agents for this. I'm not going to be on the phone. I'm watching tape, and then I'm going to refocus and get to talk to these guys after that. Sometimes I just I said, I have to do this. I can't, I'm compartmenting myself right now. I'm evaluating.
Okay. Well, as we wrap things up here, Rob, the toughest question, I think, and going back to the 2025 symposium, I posed this to the panelists. I said, listen, what do you do about tampering? And they all just kind of shook their heads and laughed. And when we referred to it last month, 2 weeks ago, kind of the same attitude. Despite this, the NCAA really came on strong in February and said, listen, we're going to try to curb this. We're going to try to slow this. We're going to try to stop it as much as we can. Where do they start, Rob? What would be the first step? Is there any way to really slow that down when it's become so rife and such a part of the game? I mean, is there any insight to it?
It's interesting because I read earlier tonight, it was an article, the Big Ten, I guess, came out heavy today with some thoughts about the CSC not policing tampering and really getting in a room and trying to decide, get some rules that fit for what we're dealing with today. And they had said statistics of about, 1,000 kids went in the portal right away, and within 72 hours they were 48 hours they were on a campus. All right, and how many guys signed right away when it opened? I would like to explore the concept, and you guys would know this more than I do. The NFL has what they call a legal tampering period. I know down at Symposium, you had a question about a 3-week kind of build up, right? I mean, that was on the screen, but the NFL has like a legal tampering period, right? Where you can talk to agents. They even this year allowed you to talk to the players, right? Before you can enter into contracts. I would like to see maybe if you want to eliminate if the conversation's in November, then have a period, okay, for this week or these 10 days, you can talk to agents. This is the period you can go, and you can do it now. And then you can when Johnny goes in the portal, something like that, you can engage him at that time. I'd like to see something like that be talked about and maybe explored. 3 weeks is a long time, but a 1 week period of time might work. And again, I do believe it all begins and ends with the conferences, but we have to be willing to police ourselves, right? Which, coaches have never been willing to do. They've never been willing to kind of narc on their buddy, right? But I think we have to have some teeth in some things, and the conferences can be the ones that have to do this. We have to kind of, I don't want to use the word govern ourselves, but we need to set some parameters with the 4 conferences that we all agree to and we all stick to, and we don't run the court if you break the rule and there's ramifications for breaking a rule.
Yeah. Well, we all know it only takes one of those to break decorum, and everything goes a bit haywire. The good thing is this year, we're here in March. We get you on. You're not preparing for a spring portal. So again, a step in the right direction, perhaps, is again, everything's going to continue to get shaken out, continue to, go in the right direction. We need college football to be good. We need some, I don't want to say regulation, but we need some leadership to get everybody on the same page. And again, I think there's enough people in college football that understand that, and you certainly do. And we really appreciate you being on. He is at Coach Rob Ianello. I'd imagine you're still in the middle of spring ball some good things out of spring ball that you've seen
We
so
actually
far?
just going to start tomorrow. Spring
Beautiful.
practice, have a couple then go on spring break. So we decided to go later than we normally do in the years past because we just felt like having a full 8-week cycle for our players with the many new guys that we brought in between freshmen and transfers that would benefit us the most. So the early indication from our off-season workout stuff we've been doing, the skills and drills stuff has been really good, and so I'm excited for when we do really start practicing. But hey, I really appreciate being on, and you guys do great stuff, and the support you give to the scouting industry and to the agents and to keeping that in the forefront. Really applaud you for doing that, and thanks for letting me have a chance to visit with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he is at Coach Rob Ianello on Twitter. Make sure you go give him a follow. And, I don't think we'd make it out of here without at least one rock chalk, right?
Lock chalk Jayhawk, baby.
Agents, before we go, make sure you go check out Agent Live 360. It is at agentlive360.com for everything you need for your agency, from players to coaches, managing profiles, tracking invoices, sending invoices, getting paid, keeping up on every element of your entire agency. Notification emails, file folder storage, ROI, transactions, invoices, calendar, contracts, teams, reps, everything all in one spot for you. That is Agent Live 360. Hop on, request a demo. Yours truly will hop on, walk you through it. I can promise you we will talk some football as well. Sign up now with code TRIAL90 for a 90-day, 3-month trial at just $10 a month for Agent Live 360. That's at agentlive360.com. Go check it out now.